It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays, and yes, it's supposed to be a gaming week, but I had no idea what to do game wise. I'm super tired, and yesterday was kind of a rush with news coming out of various courts. Woo! Anyway, that's not what it's about. Well, maybe it is about, because there might be some difficult conversations going on. I asked one of the bubbles that I run, what I should do for Wellness Wednesday, and they said, feeding off Manly Monday about how to have difficult conversations, how to tell people difficult, personal, sensitive things, and that is an entire workshop series. But I'm gonna crack it open a little bit now to give people some pointers. If you like this content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. People have been very, very generous on Ko-fi lately. So thank you so much for that. That very, very generous. It's humbling. So difficult conversations. You guys know I'm big on control what you can control. Don't worry about the things you can't control. The only thing you can control is what you take in and what comes out of your mouth. You can't control the other person. You cannot guarantee an outcome. And that's a very, very important headspace to go into difficult conversations. I've had quite a few of them, thanks to Stalker-chan, lately. And every time I went into one of those, I told myself, look, all you can do is conduct yourself well. You cannot force anybody to believe you. You cannot force anyone to see things your way. All you can do is set your boundaries, set your conditions, conduct yourself well, and, the rest is out to the universe. And there were some conversations that went really well. There were some conversations that did not go well. And I had planned in advance that if I got any pushback whatsoever in some of these, it was non-negotiable. If someone was not willing to have a conversation, well, that was it. Have a nice life. And that's one thing you should really figure out before you start. How much is the relationship worth to you compared to how much is the issue worth to you, right? If you feel very strongly about it, if, this is a core values conversation and it's like a deal breaker, well, then it's a deal breaker, and that's valid. That's valid. You have the right to say, no, this is that important to me. If it's not, all you can really do is say your piece. And sometimes you have to say it in a non-confrontational way and give people some time with it. Because some people are really good at difficult conversations. Some people are less good at difficult conversations. Some people are good at certain types of difficult conversations, less good at others. I've been doing some, wrangling some sensitivity reads for a project lately. And, we got around to criticism that was tough, but it was said, one, it was honest. It was what we asked for. This is why you do sensitivity reads, because it's better if something blows up quietly than in private than blows up loudly in public, right? That's the whole point. And so it's like, all right, and there was a conversation about how to fix it. And I thought it went pretty well. And so that was a difficult conversation where everyone was an adult. And even though it was tough, it was successful because it was tender stuff, right? Hence sensitivity. If there's someone in the conversation who is not an adult, mentally or emotionally, do you really want to have this conversation? If it's one of those things that you're like, I just need to say it for myself. Again, all you can control is yourself, not the other person. Ow, that hurt. Don't know what's going on there. So that's all you can control. Just your side. You start trying to control other people. That's a you problem. Their reactions are a them problem. What does that mean? Well, there's certain things that are going to get you better results once you've decided you're going to have the conversation and you recognize you can't control the outcome. There's certain things that are going to get you better results than others, right? And then it comes down to assumptions. In a difficult conversation, you want to go slow and you want to be very careful not to take big leaps. In a difficult conversation, nothing is clear, obvious, or certain. Okay? It's not, you guys know how I feel about you clearly implied. If it's clear, it's explicit. If it's not clear, it's implicit. Hence, clearly implied is a paradox. So that if you just don't be strident, tell your story, focus on what you know, and this is where it starts getting real tough, because when you are talking about something sensitive, there is an urge to come on real strong because you want to, strong case, persuasive. But sometimes easing up some makes you more persuasive. Avoid things like always and never statements, because what you're trying to do is avoid the other party feeling blamed. Now, there are certain things where it's not about blame. It's about people feeling powerless or like they should be doing something. And, Leanna Care's clients and workshop attendees know how I feel about should. The word should, the minute should comes up in a conversation, stop, question it, because some should statements are fair. Children should always feel safe. Yes, sometimes they don't. What does that mean? You got to be careful with that, because somebody in a vulnerable place can hear a statement like that and go, well, what's wrong with me because I didn't feel safe? Well, nothing, but that's the yellow flag on should, right? We don't live in a world of what ought to be. We live in a world of what is. And you should listen to me. You should support me. You should apologize. Those are going to heighten the conflict and get you a less good result. Have you considered maybe possibly, instead of should? But in general, again, I find it best to just state your piece and then take in what the other person says, and you are responsible for you. They are responsible for them. That's the way it works. Then there's the feelings element and the you made me's, or I had to. I had no choice. In some cases, yes, in extreme cases, that's true. You know, there are certain things where it's the choice you made, or that's it. You're done. You can't live with it. Fair. But there's a lot of things where no, you made a choice. And it's much better to own that choice. You made me do this. If someone truly has the power to force you to do something, you probably are going to get the bad end of things calling that out. Because they have power over you, they're not going to listen. If someone sits there and takes you saying, you made me, reconsider whether that's true. There's a difference between saying, I felt upset or hurt or angry when you did that thing, because here are my reasons, and you made me angry. You made me scream at you. You made me do this. You know, it's one thing to say, I lost my shit because my boundaries were violated. And I told you my boundaries were violated and you kept pushing, but that's not, you made me do something. It's my boundaries were violated. It's a different thing, right? But though, again, the whole point is minimizing or eliminating blame. The other thing you really want to watch in difficult conversations is judging statements. And again, this is really hard when you're talking about something traumatic. And this is where a lot of messaging, a lot of public messaging goes wrong, right? Because it's labeling people. Instead of identifying the problem and saying, this is how we're going to fix the problem. You know, it's the whole basket of deplorables thing. Now, she was talking to a particular audience when she said that, you know, but I mean, Trump also got busted for defamation because he called E. Jean Carroll a liar. She made it up. She's a hoax. Here's all the reasons she did it. $5 million later, right? If he just said, no, it didn't happen, that's not defamatory. Assigning character or motivations that you couldn't possibly know, and in that case were just, you know, there was a lot of evidence against that statement, right? So it's always better to focus on that thing that happened was a problem. You know, that thing you did or that thing that was done had this result, instead of that was wrong, that was unprofessional, you're disgusting, you know, the stuff you see again and again and again. Yes, people who do this for a living do it wrong because they're looking to rile up a base who already believes a thing that they're trying to create enthusiasm for. They're not trying to persuade people on something difficult, in part because they think it can't be done. There, you know, a lot of politics is trying to make that group of reliable voters show up and vote, as opposed to persuading people to vote for them. You know, turnout elections are pretty much the paradigm, which is why you don't see the things I'm saying in media, even in news. News is really bad for this, and I wish editors would go back to what we know is actually persuasive. Because articles where if you think this, you're a bad person, right? That was the problem with the whole Hogwarts Legacy thing. It wasn't, this is how I feel when someone plays this game. Rightly or wrongly, I feel really bothered. And here's why. You know, it feels, I worry that, you know, I can't trust someone. Can we have a conversation about, not I can't trust you. I worry about this. It's not the same thing. I'm afraid is not stating it as fact. See the difference? Instead of, you know, I was told I supported genocide because I'm like, play your video game. I don't care. I'm not gonna, but play your video game. Genocide. Not persuasive. But people keep doing this because it's follow the leader, monkey see, monkey do. And it don't work. The minute you start attacking someone's identity or their moral fiber, they will get defensive. And you are less likely to be able to have a conversation that doesn't escalate if you're hitting those moral pain points, right? What I always ask people, if you think I'm such a piece of shit, why are you talking to me in the first place? And the answers tend to be very unsatisfying because they can't admit, well, I don't. I was just using manipulative language, right? And so cause and effect instead of intent is really important. This was the outcome is different from this is what you meant to do. This is what you intended to do. Very different. A person can accept that something had a bad impact on them. But when you're telling them they had a motivation or they had an intention that they did not have, you've lost them. Similarly, attempting to be above it all does not work. It comes across as condescending and kind of an asshole move. It's not personal, no offense, but I'm just being honest. Some things are inherently personal. When you are criticizing someone, it is personal. People, successful people only consider advice from people they think have their back, not people who want them to fail. It's one thing, like I said about, the sensitivity read. We asked. Whereas if somebody just comes out of nowhere and says, you're this, you're that, this is awful, whatever, it's like, that's nice. I'm sorry, who are you? This is what, this is a premise called social norms versus business norms. And this comes from a book called Predictably Irrational. The author is named Dan Ariely. The minute you start engaging in business norms, the paradigm is fairness. X amount of labor in or money brought forward, Y amount of goods in trade or, currency in trade. It's got to be fair. People don't want to be taken advantage of, right? It's got to be a good deal. With social norms, it's do me a favor. And social norms are about strengthening bonds between people as opposed to negotiation and fairness, right? And that doesn't mean you can't have a negotiation about a social or emotional thing. It just means the minute you start going, it's not personal, it's just business, try being professional. You're putting somebody on a business footing, which means it's adversarial. and they're going to be not personal back. They're not, because what you're telling people is, I don't care about your feelings when you say that. Fight it all you want. That's what people hear. Right? It's not personal. It's just business. That means I'm going to stab you in the back first chance I get. Whereas, look, I know this might be a big ask, but can you do me a favor? You know, or even, you don't have to preface it with that. If you know it's a big thing, it's important to validate that it's a big thing. But just something as simple as, you know, if there's a difficult person, it's like, do me a favor. Can you handle this? Or can you take care of this? Or making it clear that, yes, it is a favor. That means in future, a person has a right to ask you for a favor. Now, it doesn't mean you have to say yes, but the understanding in social norms is that it's not a fair deal immediately. It's strengthening the bonds. It's strengthening the relationship. And the currency there, the benefit there is trust, as opposed to immediate financial or, you know, commodity gain. It's very important to know the difference. Very important to know the difference. When you personalize stuff that, you know, for instance, a sensitivity read comment, which is, that's the point. You got to hear people's honest. That's an issue. When you depersonalize something that is personal, when you're talking about feelings, it's personal, right? This thing you did hurt my feelings. That's personal. That's personal, because if it's not personal, why are you bothering? Why do you expect the person to care? It's personal. It's not, no offense, nothing personal. Learn to handle criticism. No, that's personal. Either you have the relationship with someone to do that or you don't. The little things matter. Sometimes a conversation can rise and fall on just one little thing that set a person off, made the blast shields go down, and they're not willing to listen to. The best way to prevent that is to go slow, say one thought at a time. So, you know, if you have to tell people that something bad happened to you, it's something as simple as, look, it's important to me that you know something. If you think they're going to have a bad reaction, say, I would prefer to just be able to say it. I'm not looking for commentary. I'm not looking for advice. That's very important to say if you're not, because if you're dealing with fixers, their inclination, their idea of being helpful is to try to solve the problem. So I'm not looking for solutions. I'm not, or if you are looking at advice, say so, but make it clear what you're looking for. You know, I just need you to listen. I just need you to accept what I'm saying. I don't need anything else. I just need you to accept what I'm saying. And then come out with it, but one thought at a time. Like, do you remember that thing that happened last week? Yes, no. You know, if they say yes, okay, you can proceed. If they say no, well, what good is going forward? If they don't remember it, there's not, you know, you can say something like, okay, well, do you take my word that it happened? Yes or no? Okay, do you remember this part? Right? You've got to have common footing before you proceed. Because if you don't, a person's just going to feel bowled over and very likely falsely accused. And that the goal is to keep the sense of blame and the sense that a person has to act out of it, has to act right away out of it. Now, if you're on the receiving end of hearing difficult things, something like, what are you looking for me here? What are you trying to get here? ask a person what their motivations are instead of assuming. That's really helpful. And it's really important to take turns, to give and take in the conversation. I say on It's Not Therapy, listen twice before you talk once, because I honestly think in order to get a good result, you have to be twice as willing to listen as you are to speak. Because if you're not, you're going to miss stuff and you're going to respond to the wrong things. And even with all of that, it may still not go well because the other person's not holding up their end. And if that's true, you know what? You did your best. Your goal should always be just, I'm going to say this so they know. I was saying to somebody yesterday when they felt very silenced, they felt like everybody hated them because they're feeling bad about things and they feel like they don't get to talk. And I said, well, why don't you feel like you can say anything? Just tell them they don't like it. Well, I don't want to upset them. And I said, look, if you were in their position, would you rather know, even though it stings some? Or would you rather they said nothing and you just kept doing the thing they didn't want you doing and you found out months later, possibly through a third party they complained to, and you were like, if I just known, I could have stopped. And the person said, okay, I see your point. And when you consider it from the other perspective, when you are open to the fact that yours is not the only frame, that there are other viewpoints on this, there are other paradigms, you're going to get much better conversation on difficult things. I talk about difficult things for a living. So I have had shit blow up on me in more different ways than you can imagine. It will continue to happen just because, law of averages. I have a lot of difficult conversations on a lot of difficult topics. I make mistakes. Because I am aware that I make mistakes, I do my best to be forgiving of other people's mistakes as long as I see them trying and as long as it's clear it isn't, they aren't being negligent. There's, after a certain point, I didn't mean to, loses its value. Because you've just done the I didn't mean to too many times. If someone is being conscientious and legitimately attempting to understand and meet you halfway, or have a give and take, the benefit of the doubt, the goodwill, the benefit of the doubt earns is worth the risk that somebody might be coming at you in bad faith and you miss it. You don't have to agree to anything until it makes sense to you. But there's just no point in leveling a whole bunch of accusations about someone and their motivations. If you think someone doesn't have your best interest at heart, if you think they're coming at you in bad faith, don't have the conversation. If you're going to engage in the conversation, the assumption has to be good faith until you see otherwise. Okay? Hopefully this helps. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Ko-fi.com/Leanna K. 6 people per month. I would like to add a 7th. I just got contacted by someone. But thanks for watching and be well.